I viewed this as an election between who is gonna preside over the bankruptcy of this nation. I mean, mathematically, this thing's going down, and in my mind, it was a question of whether we go down under the rule of law of the Constitution, or whether we go down under the rule of their law, which is a sliding scale. It changes depending upon the situation. So that's first and foremost. I think people are happy that the House, the Senate, and obviously Trump, it's all one party. The problem with that is there's not going to be any breaks whatsoever on spending. Whatever they want to spend money on, it's going to be like a rubber stamp. Boom, let's spend the money. We've got close to a $36 trillion deficit now. And I would imagine 4 years from now, that deficit or the debt will probably be 45 trillion or more. I mean, I would imagine they'll add another 9 or 10 trillion if markets allow that to happen. And I don't think that's the case. And I don't think that's the case because we're spending too much money on interest only. I mean, this year was 1.1 trillion.
Interest payments.
Next year is going to be 1.5. And within 2 years, we'll be paying 2 trillion in interest only, while we're taking in 4.7 trillion in tax revenue. We're going to be paying 40% of all tax revenues in just interest alone. That's not sustainable at all. I don't know if they're getting ahead of this, but I mean, think about it. There is so much waste everywhere. You're talking about, $250 hammers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That's got to stop. But it doesn't matter if it stops because what's already in place is not sustainable. So they can stop the craziness, but they can't fix what's already been done. Yeah, it's math at this point. And just going back to what we were talking about before, the unsustainability of the federal debt. The collapse is going to come. That is a mathematical fact. The question is how long. And, maybe participants are looking at it and saying, well, it would have been an immediate rug pull after Kamala got in, and now it's not going to be an immediate rug pull. My guess is probably June or July of next year, after, 3, 4, 5 months of Trump being in, that's when reality is going to really set in. What happens, we are going to have a system that looks far different than it does today. One of the good things I think Trump is going to try to do is to bring Judy Shelton into the Federal Reserve. And she is a hard money advocate. The problem is the system as it is, you can't, it's going in one direction. It's got to go straight. There can't be any turns. And because it's so fragile, it's so precarious at this point. I felt good for a week. And I think, people, generally speaking, half the country or a little more than half the country felt good from election day. I felt good from election day until yesterday when some of his choices from the cabinet came up. Elise Stefanik, it's like we're doing the whole thing all over again with war hawks in his cabinet. Yeah, especially if Marco Rubio becomes chief of staff, or not chief of staff, Secretary of State. He's a war hawk. The dollar has gotten a strong bid. It's gone from 102 to over 106, and it's been a straight line since last Tuesday. If you look at charts, there is correlation between the dollar index and gold and silver. I would just say that gold and silver will certainly do a correction anyway. Now, as far as markets are concerned, I think obviously regulations are going to be relaxed. It's going to be easier to do business. There is some logic as to why the stock market's gone higher, but we've gone higher from nosebleed levels in the first place. When all is said and done, I think all that's going to be wiped out. And as I've said all along, I think this is going to become a credit/currency event that's going to topple pretty much the whole system. And the laws that have been put into place as described by the Great Taking, people are going to lose their assets through bail-ins.
Does this change anything in your outlook into precious metals?
No, not at all. The pullback in gold is what? 6%, 7%, and
Right.
silver bigger, but silver's always more volatile than gold. I think it's interesting that a couple weeks back, Russia came out and said that they're going to buy other commodities other than gold, and the first one they listed is silver.
Yep.
And I will just say that silver is such a small market for Russia to try to come in and buy. If Russia were to come in and try to buy 250 million, 500 million, $1 billion worth of silver, I think that would probably clean up any and all of available silver. So, whether they do that or not, to this point, Russia and China have pretty much let the U.S. go down the road to perdition on their own volition, rather than trying to push the U.S. off a cliff because they don't want war. Now, if Russia steps up and breaks the silver market, yeah, those could be construed as fighting words, and you'd have a war. My guess is that Russia's probably, going to pick away with smallish trades, $25, $50 million, just to turn the screws a little bit, but not enough to put it over the edge. The situation, the way it is right now, well, I think the last number I saw was there's 406 paper gold ounces or silver ounces for every single silver ounce that exists.
Really?
I mean, how's that even possible? Yeah, if you look at the contracts, the LBMA contracts, the COMEX contracts, there's far, far more silver represented by paper than there is silver.